Right, so we picking up where we left off last week. If you wasn't here last week, you've had a chance to watch the video, but if you haven't, I'm going to give you a quick recap. If you remember, we're looking at the book of Esther, and as I said, something different to what I've ever done before. I still don't know if I'll ever do it again like this, but we're doing it as a journey together. We're going through the book of Esther, and it's not really a sermon, it's not really a teaching, but it's got a bit of sermon in there, it's got a bit of teaching in there. But we're going through it as a journey to have a look at it. And as we said earlier, the book of Esther is unique because of one simple reason. Out of the 66 books in the Bible, Jesus isn't mentioned anywhere. God is not mentioned. Full stop. He's not in that book. His name is not mentioned. So, quick recap on last week. King Xerxes, ruler of one of the biggest pagan empires of the time, throws this huge party lasting just shy of half the year, so he can invite everybody to come and look how great he is. I mean, let's face it, that's what the party was for. I've got all this money, I can throw a party. I mean, most of us, if we wanted to put on a big banquet or something like that, we could do it for a day. We could afford to do it for a day or something like that and have some friends round. We couldn't invite half of our empire round and have it going for 6 months. We would be financially ruined. But he's not. He's showing off to the world how great I am. Look at me. Look at my splendour. And at the end of the party, he decides to parade his beautiful queen as his crowning glory. Remember we said we think he got to the point where he'd run out of things to show off. Everybody had probably seen every goblet now because this party's been going on for 6 months. They'd seen all the gold, the linen, all the gold, all the silver. But he thought, I know what, they've not seen my wife who's throwing her own banquet. I'll call for her and she can come out and they can see how beautiful she is and they'll think even more of me. Only one problem, she refuses to come out. The king then basically has a temper tantrum because his whole party has now been ruined. The last 6 months, there's been celebration and everything like that. It's now been soured by this last moment, and he's thinking that all people are going to do is go away and think, well, he might be rich, but the queen wouldn't obey him. The queen wouldn't come out for him. So what does he do? And as we said before, he goes and seeks his wise counsel, 7 men. And as I said before, it's men, and as I said, not being sexist, men don't seek men about relationship advice. It's not because we're men and we don't do that sort of thing. It's because no man understands the mind of a woman. So it would be pointless in going to ask another man for the advice of a relationship with a woman because they're just not going to know. So that's why we don't do it. It's not because we're men and we don't just talk about things like that. No man understands the mind of a woman no matter what they say. So that's why we don't bother. And it's been ingrained into us for years. But he seeks his wise 7 men. And they get rid of her. They throw the queen out. That's the first bit that they come up with in their wiseness. And then they make a law that all men are the heads of their own households. King Xerxes then picks a new queen, Esther. Then we meet a man, the king's number 2, who has a massive ego, which is a bit of an understatement. And this ego is constantly inflated because everyone has to bow down in his presence. Then we meet Mordecai the Jew, who really gets under Haman's skin because he refuses to bow down to him. We left off with the man being enraged. Oh, one really last important thing. We are 3 chapters in and there's still no mention of God. So here we go again. Part 2. Esther 3:5. When Haman saw that Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honour, he was enraged. Not angry, but enraged. That is a strong reaction, and it shows how much Haman's ego was inflated. Haman more than just hated Mordecai for his refusal to kneel down and pay honour to him. Haman's hatred did not stop with Mordecai. Instead, I personally, when I wrote it, I said he took it one step further. But this is a lot of steps further. He sought out to destroy all the Jews. He decided that getting rid of Mordecai wasn't enough. He wanted to get rid of Mordecai and all of his people. The decision to target a whole group of people for the apparent insult of one individual speaks to a deep historical and emotional context. The text refers to Ammon the Agathite, a detail that carries significant historical weight. Aga was the king of the Amalekites, a people who were ancient enemies of Israelites. The rivalry between the descendants of Amalekite and Israel is chronicled through the Hebrew scriptures, dating back to the time when the Amalekites attacked the Israelites after their exodus from Egypt. And that's recorded in Exodus 17:18-16. But I'm not reading all that out. In the time of King Saul, the conflict reached a dramatic point when Saul failed to fully destroy the Amalekites and their king, Agag, in 1 Samuel 15. Over generations, this animosity was embedded into the collective memory of all people. Thus Mordecai, a descendant of Kish, Saul's family line, and Haman the Agathite, symbolically represented the continuation of an ancient feud. So these two they've never heard the phrase, let bygones be bygones. They were still carrying this deep hatred in them because one was this and one was that. It had nothing, this feud had happened years and years ago, but it doesn't matter. They still carried it on. They wanted this feud to carry on. So it carried on. They didn't let it go. They didn't forgive. They carried on arguing, and it would lead to trouble. For Haman, the refusal of Mordecai to refuse to bow down may be felt like a rekindling of the ancient hostilities, a reminder of humiliations past and the enduring defiance of the Jewish people. But Haman's hatred cannot be explained by history alone. It is also fueled by personal pride, wounded ego, unchecked ambition. Haman's sense of self-worth was deeply dependent on the public verification of his authority. Mordecai's single act of resistance undermined this. Can you imagine being that insecure that because one person out of the empire refused to bow down to you, that he got you enraged? Everybody, thousands of people, thousands upon thousands of people, wherever you went, they kneeled down, they bowed to you. But this one person, he wouldn't do it. And it got him so angry that he was enraged about it. So, Haman wants to destroy Mordecai, which is bad enough as it is, but as I said, he takes it a lot further. He wants to kill all the Jews. We're talking about genocide here, wiping off all of God's chosen people off the face of the planet. So this is it. This has got to be the moment where God is going to show up and smite this evil person, or at least send one of his prophets to warn him against his actions. Wait for it. Any minute now, he's going to show up. He's got to. They're his chosen people. God's got to show up. His chosen people are in danger. No, still no sign of God getting directly involved. What is going on? These are his chosen people. They are his chosen people. But yet, there's still no sign of him getting directly involved, sending a messenger, giving any warning or anything like that. He's not done that. He's not he's named in this book. So where is he? To accomplish his scheme, Haman approaches King Xerxes with cunning and manipulation rather than transparency. He does not name the Jews directly, but describes them as a certain people scattered through the province and of the empire, people with distinct customs who he claims do not obey the king's laws. He claims that. He's not proven it, he just claims it. Haman frames their difference as a threat to the unity and stability of the realm, suggesting that tolerating such non-conformity undermines royal authority. Now you've got to give it to Haman. He's good at what he's doing. I don't condone it, don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm saying, but he's good at what he's doing. He's going along to the king and saying there's this group of people, they're not following your rules. They're a disruptive force. They're breaking the unity within our empire. And that's one thing that I can strongly agree with. Anything where there's no unity, an empire is weakened. And that would have got the king's attention. That would have made him go, oh, right, okay, we need to be strong. We know people are going to come after us because of the size of us. We've got to be unified. So, he agrees. So basically, Haman is a sneaky, manipulative person, appealing to the king's interest in maintaining order and his own desire for favour. Haman offers a massive sum of silver to the royal treasury in exchange for the king's consent to annihilate the people. Xerxes, perhaps detached from the precise what's going on, or just trusting judgment, hands over his signet ring to Haman. He just takes it off and goes, there you go. And that's how the royal decrees are made, by the sealing of the ring and signet. So, why did he do it? Was it pure trust? Was it just laziness? He couldn't be bothered. He was too busy sunning himself in all his glorious palace? Or was it God working in the background? Because if you was a king or queen, you was in charge of a vast empire, and you had one piece of jewellery that symbolised the lawmaking of that land, would you just hand it over to someone, even if it was your second in charge? I wouldn't. I would want to know what was being written before I was putting my name to it. And you think that somebody who's risen to be the king of such a large empire has not got there by making foolish mistakes. But all of a sudden, here he is, he's handing over his ring. It would be like King Charles rolling into it and going, there you go, Rob. There's my crown. Here's the keys to Buckingham Palace. You can go and do whatever you want for however long you want. It's the same thing. I know the king nowadays doesn't have as much power, but there's no way when you bring, say, a flip-flop into this, so I'm not keeping politics out of it. So, his new power, Haman sent a message to all the provinces in Persia. All the Jews, including all the women and children, were to be killed. Some message that is, isn't it? All the Jews, including all the women and the children, were to be killed. And as I said, this message wasn't just a normal message. It was an edict made in the king's name. Haman used the king's ring to seal the message, making it official. And as we said, once this edict had been made, it could not be taken back. It was law. It was set in motion. There was nothing you could do about it. Not even the king himself. He could not hand out one of these edicts and then go, you know what, I've changed my mind. Bring it back, we're not doing that. That's not how it worked. The edict was made and it was going to happen, whatever it was. So, Haman, after this edict had been sent out, decides to cast lots as to see when it's going to happen. So they cast these lots and the date is chosen, 7th of March the following year. It's nearly a year away. I always thought, when I was first reading this, why nearly a year? This is a man that hates the Jews. He's incentivized people to kill the Jews. He's told them that when this edict happens, all the Jews that you kill, all their property will be your property then. So the more Jews you kill, the richer you become. Don't worry about it. They're only Jews, they're not your own people. But he throws lots to see when it's going to happen. If he was that enraged, if he was that angry, you would think, right, this edict's been written, it's next weekend, we're off. Give the people a week to get ready, and then we're off. We're going to annihilate the Jews. Because, like I said, enraged people are not thinking rationally, they don't start planning like that. It's, we want to get at it. But he cast the lot. And then he's said that it's nearly a year later. Do you think that maybe there was a reason behind that? That maybe God was controlling the lots? That maybe God made it nearly a year later so that his plan could be put into place? It's worth thinking about. If these lots had come out and it had been, if Haman had refused to do the lots and just said, right, that's it, we're off to attack the Jews, God's plan never would have happened. But he did throw the lots. And it came out that it would be nearly a year later. And that gave God's plan time to come into place. So was it just a random turn of events? Was God controlling the loss so that he would give him time for his plan to be put in place? So now we can add genocidal maniac to Haman's list of growing personality traits. Mordecai, in the meantime, learned about Haman's plan, and to put it plainly, he was in great distress. He tore his clothes, he went around the city crying out loudly. The Jews had also all found out about the plans, they leaving them in great distress. As well, they prayed, fasted, they wept, laying around in ashes, wearing burlap. They were in mourning because they knew this edict had been made. They knew that their destruction was coming. And they did not know what they was going to do about it. So they was mourning because that's all they could do. They was praying to God because that's all they could do at the time. They couldn't go and see the king and ask for mercy. They wouldn't have got it. The edict had been made. It was law. It was in place. Queen Esther, she's still inside the castle at this point, and she is completely unaware of this edict. She has no idea that all of her people have been sentenced to death. She doesn't know a single thing about this edict. She's in a safe place, protected in the castle, away from all this trouble and strife that's going on outside. And she, like I said, she knows nothing about it. But she hears about Mordecai being in great distress. So she sends her chief personal attendant to find out what is troubling him. Mordecai filled him in on every detail of Haman's plan by giving him a copy of the decree that had been issued. He went back to Queen Esther and he'd asked Queen Esther's servant to ask Queen Esther to approach the king and ask for mercy on the behalf of the Jews. Queen Esther's reply was, I haven't been called to the court for the last 30 days. And if anybody goes to the king's court without being summoned, it can mean their death. She's just learned that all her Jewish people are going to be killed by the end of the year. But at this point, she's worried that if she approaches the king's court, that she will die. She says, I've not been called there for 30 days. And if I approach without the king's permission, I could be put to death. And Mordecai replies to her. Well, there's one thing we got to remember. As we said last week, Esther's been given special favour with the king. She's been granted special favour. A favour that no human could grant, no human could instigate. It was only God-given favour. So, as I said, Esther had sent this reply to Mordecai telling him she'd not been summoned to the king for 30 days and she could be killed for just turning up. Mordecai replied by saying, don't you think you will be spared? Replied by saying, don't think you will be spared just because you are in the palace. He's telling her, you might be in that palace, you might feel safe and secure, but that's just the bricks and stones. You are still a Jewish person, and that will come out, and do not think that you will be spared just because you're in that palace. And he says, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. Mordecai saying, I've got trust in God. Yeah. If you don't step up, I know God will raise somebody else up that will free us from our impending doom, because we are his chosen people, and I trust in him. Well, then he goes on, and it's become a very famous quote. But who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. And that quote has been used in so many different slightly variations. Who knows you're here for a time such as this? And that resonates then with Queen Esther. It sets off a bell in her head. What if I am here for a time such as this? What if I have been brought here for this time, for this moment?
Yeah.
So, as I said, all of a sudden, she's realising that this is serious. My people's lives are on the line. And she does a 180. She completely turns around and sends a message back to Mordecai and saying, I will go and see the king. Pray and fast with me for 3 days, then I will go and see the king. And if I die, I die. So be it. She's gone from being, I don't want to get involved in this, I don't want to go and see the king about this, to doing a complete 180 and realising that, you know what, God has placed me here for such a time as this. And that is my purpose. That is my calling. So we asked Mordecai, pray for me, fast for me, and in 3 days I will go and see the king. So, that's what she does. Got to remember that the king at this point still does not know that Esther is a Jew. At this point, he does not know that Esther, his wife, is a Jew. Because when he married her, he wasn't bothered about where she came from. All he was bothered about is how good looking she was. He doesn't know that he handed over his ring to a man to give him the power to kill his wife. He's not aware of that. He doesn't know none of that. But Esther is now all of a sudden grown brave. She's gotten brave. Maybe she had a revelation from God about how serious this was. Maybe she's just received extra bravery and strength from God. Yeah. But as I said, don't forget, her first response was, no, nothing to do with me. I'm keeping out of this. And then her next response is, no, I'll do this, even if it costs me my life. Yeah. That is some turnaround. Yeah. And for me, that can only be God inspired. Yes. No matter what way you look at it, that change of mind is, like I said before, it's like repentance. Yeah. She was going one way, but she changed her mind and went the other way. Yes. She went to the calling that God had placed her there for. She'd completely turned around and gone in the opposite direction to what she was doing. For me, it was like repentance. It was like she was saying, sorry God, I didn't trust you. I'm going to go and do this. And I said, God's name still not mentioned. After 3 days of fasting, Esther put on her queen's clothes and went to see the king. He saw her standing there, and without hesitation, he welcomed her in. The king then asked Queen Esther, what do you want? I will give it to you, even if it is half of my kingdom. I mean, wow, that is amazing. At the time, that is unheard of. For the king just to go instantly, straight away, boom, raise his sceptre up and go, yeah, you come in. And then first thing he says to her is, what do you want, queen, my queen? Even if it's half of my kingdom, you can have it. That's hard. I mean, this kingdom is not just a little tiny village. It's one of the biggest kingdoms on the earth at the time. And he just offers it to her, Queen Esther. Queen Esther says no. Because she knows there's bigger things on the line. So the queen asked the king and Haman to come to a banquet that she had prepared. So off they went to this banquet, and the king asked her, what do you really want? Again, I will give it to you, even if it is up to half of my kingdom. So here it is. Esther's now been offered half of this massive kingdom twice. I mean, that offer is tempting. I mean, I don't care who you are, but if that offer is put on the table in front of you, you're going to think about it. You're going to sometimes think, oh, this isn't any kingdom we're talking about. This is one of the biggest kingdoms in the world. And I'm being offered half of it. And he's not joking. He's being serious. He's just offered it me twice. He's being offered, I'd be crazy not to take it. But she doesn't. She doesn't take it. Because she listens to God's wisdom. She knows that it's not right, the time is not right. It's in God's timing. Even though, like I said, his name isn't mentioned, it's in his timing. She knows that God will give her the time, give her the words, and make things fall into place when it is needed. So what does she do? She invites the king and Haman to another banquet tomorrow. And she says to the king, please come to this banquet that I will prepare for you for tomorrow, and I will explain everything to you then. You've got to think about this king here. He's got to be thinking, what on earth is wrong with this queen? I've just offered her half my banquet twice. I've just offered her half my kingdom twice, and she's not answered me on it. And all she says is, just come to another banquet tomorrow. Now Haman, he's got to be just bouncing around the place. His ego has gone from being skyrocketed to being completely overinflated. He's just been to the banquet, only him and the queen as the only guest. No, as the king and the queen as the only guests. And then not only that, he's invited to a second one tomorrow. Wow, I mean, he is going to be coming out of that kingdom absolutely buzzing. He's going to be, look at me, I'm the man. I'm the only one in the entire empire that has been invited to not one, but two banquets with the king and the queen. Wow. And then, as he goes outside, who does he see? Mordecai. And boom, he's brought back down to earth. He sees Mordecai and he just enrages him again. It upsets him because Mordecai again is refusing to bow down and pay him the honour that he deserves. But he's still floating on this cloud. He's been to these two banquets. So he possibly just thinks, right, okay, I'm just going to forget about it. I need to go home and tell my wife. I need to go home and tell my family what has happened today. So that's what he does. He goes home. He leaves Mordecai alone, which is unusual for him, because he's normally that enraged. You would think he would want to do something there and then. But he's more bothered about going home and boasting to his family that how great am I? I've just been to a banquet with the king and queen. And not only that, I'm going to another one tomorrow. And there will be only us there again. How special am I? Then he starts grumbling to his wife, though, about Mordecai. And his wife comes up with this idea. And he says, and she's basically looking at her husband thinking, this is the second most important man in this empire. He's going to get whatever he wants. No one's going to argue with him. So she says to her husband, why don't you have a pole set up? Not just any pole, but a 75-foot pole that you can have Mordecai impaled on. He says you can do that in the morning before the banquet and then get off on your merry way and go and have your banquet. And Mordecai thinks, yeah, this is a great idea. But again, there's still no sign of God turning up. There's no mention of God in the book. There's no mention saying God's going to step in and save Mordecai. There's no mentioning that God's going to do something to smite Haman, get rid of him, or get rid of his evil plans. There's no mention of it. But as I said, Haman has this pole erected. This 75-foot sharpened pole, because in the morning he thinks Mordecai is going to be impaled on it. If only he knew. Psalm 7:9. Bring to an end the violence of the wicked, and make the righteous secure. You, the righteous God, who probes minds and hearts. Who probes minds and hearts. So that night, the king can't sleep. Not an uncommon thing. I can certainly relate to that. This night, I don't think it was a one-off. I don't think it was just a chance that the king didn't sleep that night. Because this next part has God's footprints all over it. He had his working through it, even though he's not mentioned. The night, Esther 6, 1-11. That night the king could not sleep. So he ordered the book of Chronicles, the records of his reign, brought in and be read to him. It was then found, recorded there, that Mordecai had exposed Bigthan and Teresh, two of the king's officers who guarded the doorway, who had conspired to assassinate King Xerxes. What honour and recognition has Mordecai received for this? The king asked. Nothing has been done for him, his attendants answered. Now, if you can remember, last week we touched on this. We touched on how Mordecai had saved the king from assassination, but he never got any reward. And we said that that in itself was strange. But we said that maybe God was saving it for the right time, for the right moment, that he would get his reward. And he would be acknowledged for what he'd done, but it wouldn't just be straight away. And here it is. The king said, "Who is in the court?" Now Haman had just entered the outer court of the palace to speak to the king about impaling Mordecai on the pole he had set up for him. Yeah, this story is just about to turn around Haman in a big way. He's just about to go and see the king, wanting to get the king's permission to put Mordecai on this pole that he's got set up in his garden to kill him. But the king's just had a dream. He couldn't sleep, and he's just found out that the Mordecai years ago saved his life and nothing was ever done. Not a coincidence. It's God's perfect timing. Mordecai received his reward. Mordecai saved from destruction by the hand of God, working in the background. His attendant answered him. Haman is standing in the court. Bring him in, the king ordered. When Haman entered the court, the king asked him, what should be done for the man the king delights to honour? Now Haman thought to himself, who is there that the king would rather honour than me? See how big his ego is? He can't even imagine that there's anybody else that the king is wanting to honour. It has to be him. So he answers the king, for the man the king delights to honour, have them bring a royal robe the king has worn, and a horse the king has ridden, one with a royal crest placed on its head. Then let the robe and horse be entrusted to one of the king's most noble princes. Let them robe the man's and the king's to the king's delight to honour him, and lead him on the horse through the city streets, proclaiming before him, this is what the king has done for the man the king delights to honour. Go at once, the king commanded Haman. Get the robe and the horse, and do just as you have suggested for Mordecai the Jew. You can just imagine Haman's face at this point, can't you? For who? Mordecai the Jew. He's just walking in there because he wants to have him killed. And the king is just saying to him, no, I want you to go and take him on horseback, parade him around the city, as you have just suggested, giving him the highest honours possible. And not anybody, I want you to do it. So Haman got the robe, got the horse, he rode Mordecai and led him on horseback through the city streets, proclaiming before him, this is what is done for the man the king delights to honour. Who is there the king would rather honour than me? As I said, he can't even contemplate the king honouring someone other than him. That's how big his ego is. That's how self-important this man is. But he ends up having to honour his mortal enemy. That is embarrassing. That is humiliating to him. But it's going to get a lot worse for Haman. So here we are, 2/3 way through Esther. Still no mention of God. Is he there at all? Or maybe, can you just start to see him working in the background, as he does in so many of our lives? He's always there. He's always working, even when his name isn't mentioned, because he loves us.
Yes.
And he doesn't leave us alone.
No. No.
So, come back next week for the third and final part. Amen.
Amen.